because we still have to test the wines as well. Biodynamics has got a very sort of a love-hate relationship with people. Some people adore it, other people think it's out there, it's a bridge too far. There's a lot of voodooism involved, and I would like to, sort of use this next 10 minutes to try and demystify it a bit. I think biodynamics are built on 4 principles. The first principle is this concept that the farm is an individuality or a closed system, a living entity. And the idea is to close the system and live off the farm exclusively. So not bring in or reduce the amount of input from outside the farm and reduce the amount of waste that actually goes off the farm again. In a way, if you think of nature, there is no waste in nature. There's only waste in culture. In nature, if something dies, it becomes the life of something else. And I think biodynamics tries to encapsulate that. That's the first principle of biodynamics. So the example I used the other day was that if you sent me a fax or you sent me an email and I printed it, if I couldn't care less once I've read it, I would simply chuck it in the bin. If I was an organic farmer, I would put it in the recycled paper tray. And if I'm a biodynamic farmer, I shred it, I feed it to the earthworm farm, and I use the earthworm compost to feed the vines again. So that's just an example of that. The second component of biodynamics is that you respect the inherent value of life as opposed to the commercial value of life. So a cow is not just a number at so many pounds, at so many dollars per pound. She's also a daisy or buttercup. She's got a personality, she's got a role, and she must be respected for the fact that she's alive, and not just in terms of how much money she can put in your pocket. Now this respect for inherent value of life is not limited to cows, it goes through to soil life as well. Microbes, fungi, look at these dandelions here, plantain, the other herbs there as well. They all play a role. They're not just weeds. They're there to improve the soil. It's nature's way to remedy what we've kind of done wrong in disturbing her through our farming activities. And they all play a very important role. The specific flower you see over here, one of the biggest challenges we face in South Africa is leaf roll virus. This virus is spread through the saliva of a little insect, a mealybug, and we often spray this mealybug to get rid of it. But despite our best efforts, they keep on coming back. Spray is highly toxic, and it's not just a marketing thing. We live on the farm. I've got 2 girls, Isabella and Tallulah. They're 4 and 8. They play in these vineyards on a daily basis, and I have to think long and hard before I put down lots of chemical sprays and things like that. So the interesting thing is when we followed a bit more of a live and let live approach, the mealybugs disappeared. And one day I pulled out one of these dandelion plants, and they all lived happily on the root of the dandelion. And it shows you, the importance of looking at things in a holistic way as well. Science today works very reductively. We break things down into smaller parts and components to understand them better. The smaller we can define them and break them down, the better grip we get on them. But another way to gain knowledge is to look at things holistically, look at systems, look at interconnectedness, and almost see nature as a spider's web, that if you touch it somewhere, it will reverberate right across. Let's have a look. Well, I'll go through the pictures later. I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. But that's the second part of biodynamics. The third one is this idea of the preparations, 500 through to 508. You do all kinds of weird things like stuff manure and cow horns, bury it in the soil. When the earth is breathing in, you dynamize it, stir it in a vortex way. The first time I was told to do this, I thought these people were completely nuts. I tried it, and it actually worked. It was amazing. After 2 vintages, the soil became really soft and spongy. The life came back to the farm, the insects came back, the earthworms came back, and the expression of the wines themselves changed accordingly. So I can talk about this for a long time, but I've already been told I must move up a bit. But just, okay, forward on that. I'd really love to share it with you, but it is a long story, and you can see I can get quite carried away with it. The last, yes.
I'm sorry, but there's so many questions from the consumers toward us trade professionals. What's a brief way that you would define the difference between organic and biodynamic?
Okay.
I always get that question.
Okay. I would say one should not see them as opposed to each other. The first thing to realize or to understand is that all biodynamic farms are organic by definition. You cannot get biodynamic certification without having your organic certification. I think that's the first point. The second point is people must understand it's a very old form of organic agriculture. It's probably the oldest form of organic agriculture, and it stems from a time when people had a spiritual understanding of farming as opposed to the modern scientific understanding of farming. And a lot of the methodology employed in biodynamics comes from this time and from this way of looking at things. They were completely marginalized with the onset of agribusiness, industrialization of agriculture in the beginning of the 20th century. And, I would say from about the 60s or 70s, when people started asking questions about sustainability and things like that, they were revisited. And today they are explained in a different way. So I will give the example that I just wanted to give. If you take this first preparation, put this manure in this lawn, bury it in the soil. If you look at our language, there are words like holy cow, mother nature, lunatic. We don't think cows are holy, nature is our mother, or the moonrise is crazy. But our ancestors obviously did, and we still see the traces of that in our language. So, as a farmer, I can imagine if you go back and try and step back 100 or 200 or 300 years, and you believe that your harvest or your crop was, not a factor of the NPK and trace elements or Roundup Ready that you used, but rather spiritual intervention, then it makes sense that the cow was an holy animal. She improved the pasture where she grazed. She gave a calf every year. She gave milk every day. At the end of her life, you could literally eat her and wear her. She completely sacrificed herself to the farm family. When she was slaughtered, they saw that she had 4 stomachs as opposed to the one of the duck or the goose or the pig. And in this innocent way of thinking, whatever came out the back end of the cow was composted or digested to a further and a finer degree. If we're talking of spiritual influence, and you think of a church, I saw that on television this morning, these beautiful churches in Germany, they all have steeples. So if you can visualize the horns of the cow as a steeple, or as this, reaching up to divinity. Then you look at Mother Nature, you go back to Greek mythology, you go to Hades, Persephone, Demeter, stealing her daughter from her mother, taking her to the underworld, and then bargaining, eventually getting her back for 6 months of the year. I think sort of a more easier visual cue is in autumn and winter, the leaves drop, everything goes into the soil. In summer you have this burst of growth, fine spud, the grass grows, you get the fruits, the vegetables, it's the exhaling phase. And then, so this manure is put in this horn, in the soil, into when Mother Nature is breathing in. And then you dynamize it, you stir this vortex. Again, you think of how water flows in nature, you think of how water flows in culture. Culture, it must flow in the cheapest possible way, which is in a canal or a pipeline. It's a straight thing, the quickest, cheapest way. In nature, rivers never run straight, they meander. And at each bend there's a series of eddies or vortexes, which puts oxygen into the river and keeps it healthy and keeps it alive. So people thinking along those almost innocent terms try to emulate nature in their farming activities, made these preparations, stirred them in these specific ways, and applied them at appropriate times. So today people can say it's very romantic, but we live in the 21st century and get with it, and so be it. You can also say, okay, pig manure is high in phosphates, chicken manure is high in nitrogen, cow manure is the best balanced manure. We put it in the horns because they allow for aerobic process. If you put it in a plastic bag, you would have a multiplication of pathogens, but because it's in a horn, you have microbes proliferating. You stir it in this way, not because of the way water flows naturally. It's simply a way to put oxygen in there to boost the vitality of the microbes. So it's a very old system, and in a way, I think we've sort of thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And today, some farmers look at that old system again for improving the way they farm and the way they make wine. Some of them prefer to keep it old school. Others prefer to take a more of a new school approach on it. So to get back to your question, I think self-sufficient farm, respect the inherent value of life, use biodynamic preparations, and then the last instance is this idea of following the natural rhythms out there. We all live indoors, we've got air conditioning, we watch the telly. In olden times people lived outside, they were much more in tune of what actually happened out there on a seasonal basis and even on a daily basis. So again, there's exactly, if you want to rack your red wine, you can do it next Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock when you've got a diary break in your diary. Or you can say, well, maybe it's not a good idea, the moon is a bit close to the earth, there will be a greater, due to the gravitational pull of the moon, there will be a greater portion of the lees in suspension. I won't be able to get such a clean runoff. I'll have to filter the wine more aggressively and consequently strip it of some of its subtleties and complexities as well. So it really is an option. There's that Tommy ticking the glass, telling me let's move on. I just want to quickly show you a few pictures of our farm. I brought them all the way here. It would be lovely to share them with you. These are the dandelions. I told you about them. Those are the wines that you're about to taste. This is the reserve red that I see at the top here. Oh, oops, sorry. Old vines, really old vines.
Oh, how old?
Well, for South Africa, about 50 to 60 years is old, and it's a bit like people, If I look at my kids, when they're babies, you have to look after them all the time, and then you become a teenager, and it's just fruit everywhere, and then they become older. I turned 40 recently, so I'm going to focus on the older bit. I think you get sort of balance and structure and character, statesmanship, and I think it's the same with wine as well, If they're older, you get maybe not such a primary fruit character, but you get a lot of other important stuff, which I really appreciate. So that's our Chenin Blanc vineyard, which we're not going to taste today. This is Kleinkie, which means a small one. It's one of our many cows. Let's see, there you can see a picture of the vineyards. This is autumn. This was taken a few weeks ago. We finished harvesting. This is the Sauvignon Blanc that you will try. Reserve white, and you can see the lovely grasses and things growing there, and yes, they do compete for food and for moisture for the vines, but they also attribute to the quality of the wines. They keep the soil temperature cooler, they change the microclimate in the bunch zone, and they basically make for, I think smaller bunches, smaller berries, and a higher concentration of fruit. Let's see what else there is. Okay, organic and biodynamic by neglect or by design. You can take away the herbicides and the pesticides and the fungicides and get the papers, but it's not wilderness, it's agriculture. So I think it's very important that you actually embrace science as well and try and use the best technology available to ourselves to make the best wine possible. This is a concrete egg. It's made by a French gentleman, Marc Nomblot, and these are used by top wineries like Romanée Conti, Chapoutier, some of the best wineries in the world. What else? This is a picture of the cellar. That's my house just sort of tucked in there behind it. I hope you guys will come and visit me, and then I can invite you for a cup of coffee or something. This is the flow form. I used to stir the biodynamic preparations by hand, not the Incredible Hulk, and it became very tiresome. So this is a flow form. It's a system of mini waterfalls that stir the water for you, and when you apply your preparations. A Herculean hand axe. These have been lying, they lie strewn in our vineyards. They've been lying there for 250,000 years at least. Some people say they go back to 1.5 million years. Whichever way, it's a hell of a long time. I mean, if you think of, in biblical times, Jesus Christ, 2,000 years, you think of Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, 300 BC, we're looking at 250,000 years ago. I mean, it's insane. It just gives you an idea of your own insignificance. It's like a speck of dirt in a long dirt road, you know, and we're very lucky to be here, and we must really appreciate our time on this planet and respect it. Leave it better than we found it. High altitude, mist. I see you guys also have mist. It's nice and cool, slow ripening, elegant wines. Charlie, my dog, he's a boerboel, which is a farmer's dog. It's an indigenous African dog. There are two of them. There's this one and the Ridgeback. They're absolutely amazing. They're the best dogs you could possibly have. And the road to our farm. If you come and visit us and you see this, you know you're safe. You're there. Okay, let's look at the wines, and then I'll